weather today? Sunny with a high of 83. Okay, can you tell me a joke? Sure. Why did the students eat their homework? Because their teacher said it was a piece of cake. Let me try asking something more abstract. Hey Siri, what's the meaning of life? All evidence shows it's chocolate. Just now, I had a little conversation with Siri, and I'm sure many of you have spoken to some sort of digital assistant, whether it be Siri, Alexa, Bixby, you name it. It's so convenient that sometimes we feel that they're even smarter than a real person, until we give them some creative questions. This technology behind Siri and her relatives is artificial intelligence, or AI. Today, from Spotify, which uses AI to give us better music recommendations, to Verizon, which uses AI to improve internet services, to Instagram, using AI to tackle online bullying. Artificial intelligence is all around us. In fact, AI is now called the fourth industrial revolution following steam, electricity, and the internet. But for too many people, artificial intelligence seems scary. But don't worry. Today, I'll talk about my research on AI, its core mechanism, and also address what AI holds for the future. The concept of artificial intelligence was first seen through depictions of robots in films such as Metropolis in the 1920s. In 1956, the term artificial intelligence was officially coined at the Dartmouth Summer Research Conference by a group of scientists from Dartmouth, Harvard, and IBM. This was a monumental moment to nail the flag to the mast. The field of AI was launched by the bold vision that computers could be made to perform intelligent tasks. But when we talk about AI, we often think of those cool robots. But actually, AI and robotics are separate fields of study. Robotics deals with machines that interact with the physical world via sensors. On the other hand, AI tackles learning and logical perception. In short, while AI acts as the brain, robots act as the body. But the evolution in both areas continues, and the line between AI and robotics is blurring, because when combined, you can get an artificially intelligent robot. And in 2018, SpaceX actually flew an artificially intelligent robot named Simon to the International Space Station. To better understand how AI works, let's look at a simple example of how the computer learns. This is a short Python program called the Capital Cities of the World. It works when you type a country's name into the search box, and it'll pull up the country's capital. Now, if a response wasn't previously recorded, then it will prompt you to put in the right answer. Now, some of you may be saying, oh, I've known country capital since I was in elementary. I don't need AI to do that for me. However, this is only the simplest learning process. Here's another example. The price of a diamond can be determined based on 7 different features. For us humans, considering 2 or 3 features can be easy, but adding on more features may hurt our brains. For AI, considering 5 or even 10 more features to compute is only a matter of milliseconds. From here, you can see that AI can compute at an incredibly complex level. To understand how AI works under the hood, we can break AI down into 2 main subsets: narrow AI and machine learning. Narrow AI is good at executing predetermined actions. Siri is a great application of narrow AI. Upon receiving your request, Siri records the sound waves from your voice and translates them into a code. She then breaks down the code to identify particular patterns and keywords. And when you hear her response, it's not a person behind the scenes, but rather just a search result from her tremendous database. And when Siri doesn't have an answer, she simply shows you a web search that matches your keywords. And finally, she converts the result to an audible response. But for more complicated questions, we don't have answers and there's no database to search. Therefore, there are no predetermined actions. So we as humans learn through experience, by trial and error, and make educated guesses via neurons in our brain. Guess what? AI learns the same way. Scientists are replicating this process using artificial neural networks, and this is the core of AI called machine learning. And this is super cool, right? Who wouldn't want to make a good educated guess when there's no way of telling what's right? I certainly do. So here at school, I co-founded a forecasting club. Forecasting is the versatile skill of predicting a future event analytically. We started with fun events such as the US Open and will continue with the upcoming elections. We're using a basic software from Microsoft and just playing around with the data. But I have to admit, with so many moving parts, it's difficult considering all the factors. So moving forward, we'll invite local university professors and AI experts to help and teach us along the way. Now, here's how machine learning actually works. There are 4 major components. The first is the mail carrier, who collects data for AI to learn. Then we have the construction worker, who builds the model. Now, not fashion model, but a set of functions that calculates the outputs. This is the simulation of the human brain. That's why these models are also called neural networks. Then the police officer, the loss function, comes in to monitor the performance, calculate the errors, and redistribute them back into the model to be recalculated. And finally, the manager, who makes the calculation process faster via a fancy jargon called the optimizer. And this process repeats for several rounds until the errors are minimized. Curious on how to better use AI, this past summer, I participated in the National Center of Atmospheric Research Artificial Intelligence Summer School. Working with scientists from Stanford University and NOAA, I learned that essentially machine learning is fitting inputs and outputs into an algorithm, otherwise known as curve fitting. And now let's look at an example from the summer school of rain prediction to see how this whole machine learning process plays out. We use temperature, pressure, and moisture data as inputs to predict the chance of rain. We used past rain events to train AI and obtain a curve. We then used the curve and sets of functions to calculate the output. And in the meantime, we used physical functions such as mass and energy because the calculations still need to follow physical laws such as mass conservation. And this process repeats for several rounds until the curve is fit. And as you can see, this machine learning process requires AI experts in the field today to collaborate with other disciplines such as environmental science, medical science, engineering, financial business, etc., to create models that advance each field. And teamwork is key for future development. While the benefits of AI are tremendous, new technology can cause concerns. Like every other innovation in human history, the risks exist. Consider the invention of cars and airplanes. We all understand the risks of traveling by these means of transportation, but they have allowed traveling to become so much easier and even impacted areas outside of basic transportation, such as logistics and emergency rescues. For those reasons, AI technology is built on the foundations of improving efficiency. And scientists are like the Wright brothers, being brave and cautious to improve this technology. Another concern is human employment. It may be intuitive to think that the growing development of AI will eventually take over many existing jobs. However, the World Economic Forum states that automation will generate 60 million more new jobs than existing jobs. And IT companies Gartner and the McKinsey Global Institute echo that thought. Now, if you watch a lot of science fiction movies like me, you might be thinking, what if the robots from The Matrix and the Terminator team up with AI to dominate humanity? Well, Oxford University released a study claiming that AI will outperform humans in many activities in the next 10 years, such as translating languages. By boosting efficiency, AI will allow us to see a decrease in manual labor and an increase in new jobs by developing new products and services. Our relationship with AI should not be like that seen in the Terminator, but rather like that we see in Star Wars with R2-D2. In fact, MIT professor Eric Brynjolfsson says that we can use the power of AI to work on the elimination of global poverty, disease reduction, and the provision of better education. He tells us not to ask what will happen, but rather, what will we choose to do with this technology? Thank you.